you've spent much time around little kids, you've probably observed the process by which they start with sort of simple ideas and develop a more and more complex worldview as they go along. One great example is most little children go through a phase where, they've learned about dogs, and every single animal they see is doggy, doggy, doggy. And at some point, initially when they start to get corrected, there might be some resistance to this new idea that's not a doggy. Well, what do you mean it's not a dog? I mean, it's got four legs and it's furry, and what's the problem? It's a dog. Well, eventually they start to learn about other animals. Oh, that one, boy, that one's bigger and it's got a long face. That's a horse. And they integrate that new information and start learning more animals and so on. As their models of the world and become more complex, it opens up doors for them to have a more interesting interaction. Most 5 and 6-year-olds, for example, love to engage with people and tell people about the things they know about the world or that they've observed, and to ask questions about what other people know. They're in this phase of being very curious and engaging. It's also a normal part of development that kids go back and forth between phases of being very open and curious and absorbing new information, and then spending periods of kind of being fixed while they integrate that information and gain some stability in their view of the world. And during those phases tend to be a little bit stubborn and resistant to new information. I'm sure most of you have encountered, teenagers who reach a point where they think they know everything there is to know about life. But this happens and it goes back and forth, and it's a normal part of development. I think as we get older and as our models become more complex, that resistance gets stronger, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's comfortable to be in a place where okay, I think I got it. And if you're constantly in a place where things are always changing and there's new information, that can be uncomfortable. Now, many, probably most people reach a point, usually in early adulthood, where they feel like their model of the world is largely complete, and their worldview and their opinions about things become relatively fixed. And again, this makes sense. I mean, it requires a certain amount of sense of stability to navigate the adult world in our modern society, and so it makes sense that people would come to this point. And when they reach that stage, there's a tendency to very much defend that territory. And so when they encounter, as they will, things in the world, beliefs, opinions that conflict with that model that they're carrying, they tend to ignore those things or dismiss them or rationalize. And then they, of course, cherry pick information that reaffirms the things that they already believe. Unfortunately, this is very limiting. It constrains our the way that we are able to see the world. It constrains our ability in our interactions of who we're able and willing to interact with and what we're willing to interact around. And it really kind of our growth and learning largely comes to a halt, and we can become stubborn, bored, boring. And very often when something does challenge our worldview and we're not aware of this phenomenon that's happening, we very often can become angry, sometimes even violent. Now, the good news is that if you're aware of this tendency, you can choose to open yourself up to new possibilities, to be curious, to channel your inner child. And so, if you notice yourself reacting to something in the world or something that somebody says, and your instinct is to, dig your heels in and defend what you believe in, maybe just take a minute and consider the possibility that what you're reacting against, maybe it isn't a doggy. And maybe by being open, you can learn something about a whole new animal.